Hello and welcome back to my channel. Not another day of triathlon training actually. This video is going to be slightly different. We're going to be talking about these two sets of shoes. I've got the Vivo Primus Light 3s, I think they are, and the Altra Escalante Pro Racers. Why am I going to be doing a comparison on these two sets of shoes? Well, about 5 or 6 months ago I made a video explaining why I run in these shoes, which is the Vivobarefoot shoes, which are very minimalist shoes. In that video I got about 1 million comments saying that a lot of people choose to run in these shoes. Obviously these are a little bit more padded, but they're sort of similar in that they're made for your more natural style or natural foot type of running. So after having made that video, I decided to look up what these Ultras were and why I got so many comments on them. Saw that they look quite good, picked myself up a pair, and I've been running in these for a few months now. So I have a good idea of what they're like, and so I thought, why not do a comparison to see why you might want these shoes and why you might want these shoes. Something that I'm not going to do in this video is tell you which ones I think you should buy. I'm basically going to talk about the pros and cons of a few different things of each shoe and let you make your own decision. This is just going to sort of be my experience of how I found each shoe, and then you can make an educated decision as to which one you might want and which one might suit you a little bit better. I've made a list of a few points that I want to cover on my phone. I'll leave these timestamped in the description below, so if you want to skip to any one of them you can. Basically what I'm going to be covering is the weight and quality of each shoe, the comfort and the feel and sort of the overall size of the shoe, the speed and performance of the shoe, the cost and durability of the shoe, and then basically what I kind of use each shoe for, because I do still run in both shoes now and I do still love both shoes. So yeah, so that's what I'll be covering, again talking about the pros and cons of each of them sort of subjects. You can skip to them in the description below by looking at the timestamps. So first thing first, I'm going to talk about the weight and sort of the quality of the shoe. I am no shoe expert nor a running expert, so take this with a pinch of salt, but I'm just going to talk about sort of my impressions of each. Firstly, let's talk about the weight. Interestingly, if you did watch my first video on my Vivobarefoot shoes, you'll know that the reason that or one reason why I really like these shoes is because they feel really light. It almost doesn't feel like you're wearing a shoe. I was worried that buying these, obviously they look a lot chunkier if you compare them, that these were going to be really heavy in comparison. These, the Vivobarefoots, came out at, so this is for the right shoe, both size 9, same size. This one came out at 236 grams. The Ultra came out at 237 grams, so they are literally 1 gram difference, and that can be made up of several different things. They're basically the exact same weight. In terms of quality, again, if you had seen my previous video on my Vivobarefoot shoes, you'll know that these shoes lasted me, I had a set before these and they lasted me maybe 2 or 3 years. Durability wise, that's pretty good. A lot of running shoes don't tend to last as long as that. I have done a lot of miles in both of these. I've done marathons in both, and yeah, and they both at the moment seem to be holding up well. Probably done 600 miles in these shoes. These shoes, the Ultras, I've probably done more like 150 miles in these. The only wear that I have found on these, which is probably the way that I run, is obviously in the center midfoot, as you can see here. The sort of tread is, I suppose, is slightly wearing, and again likewise on the outside heel, both seem to be wearing a bit. Obviously the Vivos are wearing a little bit more, but again that's because I put more miles on, and that's probably just where I drag my feet slightly, so that's probably quite hard to avoid. But in terms of like the tops and the soles and everything else seems to be, you know, holding up really well. The next thing that I want to talk about is the comfort, sort of the feel of the shoe and the size of the shoe. Again, I started off running in the Vivos. These, so I'm a size 9. I wear size 9 in every other shoe, in Vans, in whatever shoe I'm wearing, I tend to go for size 9. These come out, in terms of a size 9, come out slightly larger. Now, I say larger, I think the reason being is that these are quite wide on the toe box, so that makes them feel slightly larger, although they're not. They're probably actually more true to a size 9 foot shape. Again, because they're sort of molded to be sort of a more sort of accurate foot shape, I suppose, than like Vans, let's say. They feel a bit larger, but I don't think they're actually larger. They're just sort of more of your foot shape, so it feels more roomy. I hope that makes sense. But in terms of like length of the foot and stuff, they were spot on. Fit my foot perfectly. I run in these quite loose, so I slip them on and off. They're laces, but I slip them on and off. every time I use them, and they're more roomy, and that kind of just gives me, again, a more natural feel. Something that I had found running in other shoes was that a size 9 is actually really narrow on the foot, and again, I was worried that these are going to be too narrow on my feet, on like sort of around the toe box. They're not. They actually both feel sort of exactly the same on my foot. They're both near enough the exact same size. Do a bit of a comparison. They feel absolutely no different on my foot, obviously apart from the sort of padding. Yeah, I've no blisters, no issues at all. Slipped these straight on and they were just as comfy as these. So I think size-wise, they're, again, sort of more for that natural foot runner. So they're both, you can probably tell if I show you like this, they're both sort of the similar sort of shape. Obviously, one thing to note for sort of comfort and feel, these obviously have quite a large padded bottom bit. These don't. These have minimal, absolutely nothing on the bottom. So, although they feel the same, like around your foot, underneath the foot, so on the sole of the foot, they do feel a lot different. This, obviously having a lot more padding, feels, I suppose, more comfortable, especially if you're on sort of stony pavements or slightly rocky roads or not so smooth tarmac. Again, if you're not used to running in something that's got such a thin sole, these are going to feel a lot more comfortable. It's not to say that neither one are better, but definitely comfort in terms of what you can feel in the floor. You can feel less in this as opposed to this, which is quite obvious. But again, a lot of people might prefer having sort of that neuromuscular feedback or whatever the term is on the sole of your foot, and in which case you might really like this. But again, it's up to you. If you prefer something that's a bit more, you can feel less on the ground, this is the one to go for. If you like the feel of the ground, then this is something to go for. But it comes with warning that these shoes do take a lot of time to get used to. So don't just go out and start trying to do massive runs in these if you've never worn something like this before. But that's less to the point, that's quite obvious. I more wanted to talk about how it felt around the toe box and just the general feel inside the shoe. If there's any like tight spots in the shoe or loose spots or anything like that, and they both feel surprisingly similar. Something that really shocked me actually. I was expecting these to be a bit more tighter and feel a little bit more uncomfy than these because I've been running in these for so long, but they were near enough identical. Like I say, apart from that padding on the bottom of the foot, you couldn't really tell a difference, which really surprised me, and I'm very happy about. The other bit of padding that they do have is inside the heel here. So the Vivobarefoot shoes have like no padding around or ankle support or anything like that. The Ultras do have a little bit padding around the heel. Again, because I run both shoes quite loose, I don't really notice it. It hasn't given me any blisters or sores or anything, any problems, I suppose. It's not so much that it's ankle support really in the Ultras, but yeah, like I say, because I run them quite loose to give me a bit even more natural style of running, I haven't really felt any differences. So to summarise that, they're both super comfy. One obviously has more padding on the bottom, so if you're someone that maybe does a lot more longer running and want a bit more cushion on the bottom, Ultras. If you're someone that likes that sort of response to the bottom of your foot and likes the more sort of barefoot type running as opposed to natural running, then definitely the Vivos are the ones to go for. But they're both good in separate cases. Like I said, I still use both for different reasons, which I will be coming on to. The next point I want to cover is speed and performance of each shoe. This is where things slightly start to differ as opposed to the previous couple of points where they're pretty much the exact same. I think they both have advantages and disadvantages in certain sort of aspects of running. We'll start with the Vivobarefoot for sort of speed and performance. Yes, this can be a very fast shoe if you're the right sort of suited style runner for it. Obviously, being such a thin sole, it encourages you to run more towards the sort of the front of the foot as opposed to the heel of the foot, and it actually helps your cadence a bit more, so the turnover of your feet, because obviously you can't just slap the ground on these because it will hurt. It encourages you to run with, I suppose, better form. So in that sense, these are really good for that. And due to the fact that it makes you run towards the front of your foot and it increases your cadence, you tend to find that that'll actually increase your speed. So running in something like this does help your performance and your speed initially. However, if you're not used to shoes like this, the likelihood of you overdoing it and getting injured is very, very high. Like I say, you need to train in these a lot to be able to do longer runs in these, but I think for shorter runs, potentially shorter, easier runs, or shorter sort of interval runs on softer surfaces, if you're starting off, then these will definitely help increase your performance and speed and just your overall way of running, I think. And it's definitely something that I think all runners should incorporate into their sort of training program, whether you use something like this or you use absolutely no shoe at all and do it on grass, or maybe on the beach. Definitely think it helps with your running. It's certainly helped with my running. But yeah, I do think that's probably the advantages of this shoe. The disadvantages being obviously that you could get injured, and secondly, unless you are really used to these and you really like these, to have fast runs over longer periods of time, so doing like some sort of like maybe a 10k, half marathon, all out effort on these, that can fatigue your legs quite a lot, and you don't get, as opposed to like your Nike Vaporflies or whatever they are, the carbon base plates, you don't get that extra boost. So for longer stuff, not only will it fatigue your legs quicker and more, it will probably potentially also pull back on your performance slightly. However, if you do train in these a lot and you find that they work really well for you, I've run marathons in these, then potentially performance, will be okay. But yeah, for your more sort of beginner runners, definitely don't go out and do long runs in these. These are probably more towards your shorter, easier runs, and like I say, maybe if you want to chuck in a few sprints here and there, definitely worth it. It improves your running sort of stride, it improves your foot health, your general leg health, and your overall running really, but be cautious. Now the Altra Escalante Pro Racers, again, like I say, these I've only been running in for a few months. However, I have seen significant improvements in my longer distance running with these because of that extra sort of padding and my previous experience running in Vivobarefoots. My running stride is already quite good, I would say. My form's pretty good with running, so having that background and then moving into a more padded running shoe, for the longer distances, my legs don't become as fatigued, so I can hold the faster paces for longer because you just got that extra support in the bottom of the foot, and it doesn't matter if you start heel striking a little bit more. Over like marathon, half marathon distances, it's really hard to stay right on your toes for the whole lot. So definitely the longer distances I will always run in these now. Definitely longer distances if I'm trying to go fast as well. It's just that extra cushion allows you to be a bit more lenient, and yeah, it kind of helps keep that pace for a lot longer. But as opposed to the Vivobarefoots, these, because they've got such a soft sole, can encourage bad running form, whereas the Vivos, because they're so hard, they encourage good running form. These, you can become too lenient on that heel strike and start slouching a bit more, and it can in turn sort of start ruining, I suppose, your running form if you get too used to just hitting that heel and not picking up your cadence and stuff. So I think a mix of both shoes will ultimately help improve your running form, your speed and performance. The next point that I'm going to touch on is the cost of each shoe. If you're interested in both shoes, you probably already know the cost, but these were about £120 new, I think. And these were the exact same, so about £120. So they're both extremely similar in costs, which makes them both very competitive with each other. Do I think that £120 is a fair price for both? Yes. If you compare it to other shoes that potentially don't last as long, especially ones with carbon base plates, they don't last nearly as long as I think that these would last, especially given the performance of both, I suppose. So these will perform at a higher rate for a lot longer because you're not relying on that carbon base plate, which could deteriorate, I suppose. So yes, I do think they're worth that. If you also, I mean, £120 really for a shoe that's going to last you 2-3 years maybe. Can't say that for this one as yet, but I definitely know that these will. That's not that bad. I do probably over 1,000 miles a year. I don't think that's too bad. And yeah, I suppose that's all I can really say on cost is I don't think they're too bad. £120 for each. You can probably find them cheaper if you buy them second hand, but I don't think that's too bad for these shoes. Another sip. Now, the last point that I would like to cover is, I've kind of already touched on it, but it's what do I use each shoe for? What would I recommend you use each shoe for? Although I don't want to say go out and buy one shoe over the other. It's up to you and how you run. The Vivobarefoots, we'll start with that. Like I say, these are brilliant for helping improve or keep your running form at a good high standard, which I absolutely love. Not only improving your running form, but just your general foot tendon, your Achilles, your calves, your knees. It just helps with your general like leg health, which I think is hugely important, especially for longevity and running. I don't want to get injured or anything like that. So keeping my general running health and running form as good as I can is so important to me, and these really help do that. So for my sort of shorter, maybe easier runs, maybe towards the longer sort of hour and a half runs, I will still use these. If I've got any shorter sort of intervals, I may use these as well, but it'll probably be more for the easier runs, just so I can really concentrate on my form and get the most out of wearing these as I possibly can. Then for pretty much anything else, so definitely any race days, definitely any efforts or bigger efforts, I will use these just to try and get as much out of my legs as possible. I want my intervals and efforts to be sort of as good as they can be, and these will definitely give me that result. I do feel a little bit faster in these, so due to that fact I will definitely use these, because I think that they'll overall, if I can push myself further in my intervals and my sort of efforts, then the adaptation in my legs is going to be a lot more, obviously. And yeah, and probably if I went for anything really long, so like 2 hour plus runs, just for the fact that the comfort and they're a bit softer and less fatigue in the legs, then the next day I can still train, I'll probably wear these as well. So overall, really, it's the shorter stuff that I want to concentrate on form and technique, it will be in these. For anything longer and that I want to concentrate on speed and pace, it's these. But that's not to say you can't use these for your shorter runs, you absolutely can. And it's not to say that you can't use these for faster stuff. I have done in the past. I've only recently changed to these for the shorter, for the sort of intervals and stuff. So they both really come into their own for their own reason. Do I recommend that you buy either one of these? I think if you're, to be honest, I think if you're starting running, you might prefer something like this just because of the extra cushion, and then you can gradually increase and start working towards a shoe like this by doing some sort of efforts outside on the grass. But like I say, I don't want to say go and buy either pair. You might find that you've already got a running shoe that you really like, which is a bit more cushioned, and you want to go for something a bit more barefoot. Like I say, I started in these and it's helped my running massively, so I can't say don't buy these first, buy these. So yeah, it's up to you and where you're at with your running. That's just sort of a bit of a comparison between both. I absolutely love both shoes. Like I say, I will definitely keep wearing both shoes. I think if you're looking at becoming a more barefoot runner, obviously take it slowly. Don't jump straight into doing long runs. You do hear horror stories of a lot of people getting injured. But like I say, if you can incorporate a little bit of barefoot running into your sort of running schedule, I definitely recommend it. It's helped my running phenomenally. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover, and hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into both of these shoes and the pros and cons as to why you might want either of these shoes, and helps you make your decision as to which one you buy for your natural sort of style of running, I suppose. So yeah, if you have any more questions about either shoe or any other shoe or any sort of training, then let me know in the comments below and I'll make sure I get back to you. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you wish. We are very close to 1,000 subscribers and I'd really like to hit that. It'd be a cool little milestone for me. So yeah, make sure you do that if you enjoyed, and I shall see you next time for some more triathlon related content. Peace.